Hey guys, and welcome to Functional Friday. So today I'm going to do a video I've wanted to do for a long time. I'm going to compare the three amps that I've already shown you on this channel when I did them individually. The Matchless Chieftain, the Dumble clone by Brown Note Amps, and my Fender DeVille 410. I have other amps, but these three have been reviewed already, and I think that these three sound great on their own, but they also sound great with pedals. And so this video is going to be a comparison of them versus each other with the pedal board. Now to set it up, I've got my pedal board, as you saw in this video from earlier in the week, wired different ways. I'm going to, on the Dumble, go with my modulation effects into the back of the amp and my drives into the front of the amp. And then on the Matchless, I've just discovered that it has an effects loop in the back. So I'm going to do the same thing with the Matchless and run my modulation into the back and my drives into the front, but then I'm going to wire it using that trick that I showed you in the video on Wednesday. Go check out that video if you haven't checked it out. And I'm going to then plug the whole board into the front of the amp to compare the two. Then I'm going to go into the front of the amp on the Fender because there is no effects send and return on the Fender. It's just a clean pedal platform amp. So that's today's video. It's a really fun one. You'll be surprised which amp wins, and in the end, I'll kind of like sum it all up in a way with some cost as well. So comparing them in price versus how they sounded. All right, stick around, check it out. Here we go. All right, so as I mentioned, we're starting with the Dumble, which is my high gain amp, but I'm going to use it clean. I have cranked up the volume side, which is kind of like a preamp gain. It's not distorted at all, but it's warmer sounding because it's still a preamp tubes. It's my loudest amp, and it's going into 212s, so there's a bit of noise when it's off of standby and just on full on, but it sounds great. And I have my modulation going to the back. I've got some delay going. I've got Foxcatcher, which is a light overdrive going because that's my always on, and I've got a reverb going again into the back. Foxcatcher is going into the front because it's a drive, and as I showed you in the video earlier this week, right here, that's how I wire my board. Modulations to the back of the amp, drives to the front of the amp, as long as it's an amp with an effects loop. That's the drive going into the front of it. So here's the drive of the OverDrive Special. It's a warmer, muddier drive sound. I may have just fallen back in love 100% with this amp because I've never tried this before, and so I'd love you guys to see. This is the pedal board with the effects loop going to the back of the amp, which I've never tried before. I've always used this amp with everything going to the front. And this amp does have a natural drive to it as you crank up the volume. I've got the volume at noon, and the bass up a bit, the mid at noon, and the treble down a bit, because it's a bright amp. It always has been. But I have my modulation going into the back of the amp post-drive through the effects loop, and my drives going into the front of the amp. I have the same setup where I have delay on, it's a carbon copy, and my dataless reverb on. Both of those are in the back of the amp, and my Foxcatcher is hitting the front of the amp with the same settings you just heard on the Dumble when it was clean. You know, the one that sounded like this. And here it is with that same setup going into the Matchless. Wow. It sounds great. I don't know if it's transferring to you guys the way it is here, but it's just like, okay, Matchless, possibly my favorite amp at this very moment. I haven't played it through here yet, you know, to demo. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put on some drives going into the front of the amp and give you that sound. And then we're gonna try it with the modulation section from my board going into the front of the amp, just direct like you would normally plug a board when you're not using an effects loop. So first, drives, here we go. So here it is in the front of the amp, no effects loop, pedal board delays everything right into the front. Cool, it sounds great. I think to me, it sounded better with the delays and modulation going into the back of the amp for the effects loop. In fact, I think I want to record that way. I want to gig that way. This might be my favorite amp at this moment with pedals, as long as the pedals are going into the back. In the front, it seems brighter to me. Doesn't seem to have as much depth and heaviness as it did before. I'll have to listen to it back when I'm editing, and maybe I'll change my mind. So in listening back, I have kind of come to the conclusion that I do like it better going with the effects loop in the back, although it seemed a little bit louder and it had more breakup going with everything into the front, the modulation as well as the drives. There was more detail, even though it seemed maybe a little bit quieter when you listen back on the recording and more subdued. There was more detail to having the effects loop in the back than there was with it going straight into the front. So in conclusion, I think the way that I would run this and the way that I will run this from now on is running those separately and running my modulations into the back of the Matchless. And at that point, between the two, between the Dumble and the Matchless, right now, the Matchless is the clear winner for me. But the real question is, can it beat the almighty Fender? You know, my favorite pedal platform amp. Which, by the way, is 1/10 of the cost. All right, so now here we have it going into my favorite pedal platform amp, the Fender 410 DeVille. Well, at this point, we're going to do the shootout and talk about it at the end. But at this point, leading into today, my favorite pedal platform amp ever is this guy right here. It has no effects loop, so it's going directly into the front the way that I just had finished running the Matchless. And here's what it sounds like. Let's try it with some high gain. All right, guys, so here's what we're going to do real quick. I'm going to show you 3 short clips, really short clips, with the name of the amp on the clip. I want you to tell me which one you think is the best. Money is not an object in this particular game, so in the comments write down which one you thought was the best. You can say reasons why if you want. You can just say the name of the amp, and then after that I will kind of give you my conclusion of the video. And if you haven't liked the video already and you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching this far. Please hit the like button and subscribe button if you haven't, and notification bell, because I put out content like this all the time. And here we go. All right, here's that same shootout with a high gain pedal going into all 3 amps. Here we go. It's a tough one, guys. Make sure you comment real quick before we do this, but I think, here's my answers. I think the one that I loved playing in the room the most, and I understand why I loved it by listening back to the recording, was the Matchless. I plugged it in with the effects loop going into the back, and I honestly feel that that one had the most detail and really depicted each of the drives that I used, even the high gain, and really depicted the modulation the best. I feel like it was really just the star of the 3, not by super far. They all sounded good, but listening back to the recording, I also get that the Dumble clone is plugged into 2 12s, so there's a lot of body to that one. The 410 also has a lot of body because it's 410s. The Matchless seems to be the most, I don't want to say thin, but the smaller sound, even though they're all at the same volume, but it still had the most detail, I believe. And the compression helps. Matchless has this natural compression that I love. So does the 410. So my answer, if money's not an object, Matchless. Now, if money is an object, and this is not when I asked you guys to rate on, and I don't really want you to think about it too much, I just figured I'd give you this opinion. If money was an object, I would have to say the 410 wins hands down, because it's not worse than the Matchless. It's just a little bit different. And it's a 1/10 of the price. It's $400 and something, and the Matchless is $4,000. So, you know, for the money, if you're on a budget, 100%, I said this in the last video, go pick one up. You should have one in your collection anyway, even if you have a Matchless and a Dumble. I do. It's a beautiful pedal platform amp, and it really goes great with pedals, especially if you're plugging them straight into the front. All right, folks, so that's it. That's your Functional Friday. Thank you for sticking around this long, if you've stuck around this long. And please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell so that you can get more content like this. Let me know in the comments if there's anything else you wanted me to cover. And if there's anything that you want me to do for a video, please suggest. I'm happy to do lots and lots of different things. I've got a lot of gear, and I'd love to give you guys an example of what these things sound like in different scenarios. So until next week, have a great Functional Friday and a great week. Take care.